Control of the base was contested from 1999 onward between the Northern Alliance and Taliban, often with each controlling territory on opposite ends of the airfield. Taliban forces were consistently within artillery and mortar range of the field, denying full possession of the strategic facility to the Northern Alliance. Press reports indicated that at times a Northern Alliance general was using the bombed out control tower as an observation post and as a location to brief journalists with his headquarters nearby. Reports also indicated that Northern Alliance rocket attacks on Kabul had been staged from Bagram, possibly with Russian-made Frog 7 rockets. In 2000, the Taliban took over control and forced the Northern Alliance to retreat further to the north. During the US-led invasion of Afghanistan, the base was secured by a team from the United Kingdom's Special Boat Service. By early December 2001, troops from the 10th Mountain Division shared the base with Special Operations Command officers from MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. Paratroopers of the 82nd Airborne Division from Fort Bragg and the small communications team consisting of personnel from the 269th Signal Company, 11th Signal Brigade out of Fort Huachuca. The British force consisted of B and C companies from 40 Commando, Royal Marines. As of mid-December 2001, more than 300 US troops, mainly with the 10th Mountain Division, were providing force protection at Bagram. The troops patrolled the base perimeter, guarded the front gate, and cleared the runway of explosive ordnance. As of early January 2002, the number of 10th Mountain Division troops had grown to about 400 soldiers. There were numerous dining facilities at Bagram Airfield. Troops and civilians had various dining options that included Pizza Hut, Subway, an Afghan restaurant, as well as green beans coffee shops. In late January 2002, there were somewhere around 4,000 US troops in Afghanistan, of which about 3,000 were at Kandahar International Airport, and about 500 were stationed at Bagram. The runway began to be repaired by US, Italian, and Polish military personnel. By mid-June 2002, Bagram Airfield was serving as home to more than 7,000 US and other armed services. Numerous tent areas housed the troops based there, including one named Viper City. It was reported that Bagram came under daily rocket attack in 2002, even though most of these attacks went unreported by the press. Landmines were also a serious concern in and around Bagram Airfield. By late 2003, Bihar's 18 by 36 foot structures made of plywood designed to hold 8 troops were replacing the standard shelter option for troops. There were several hundred with plans to build close to 800 of them. The plans were to have nearly 1,200 structures built by 2006, but completion of the project was expected much earlier, possibly by July 2004. The increased construction fell under US Central Command standards of temporary housing and allowed for the building of Bihar's on base, not to show permanence, but to raise the standard for troops serving here. The wooden structures had no concrete foundation and thus were not considered permanent housing, just an upgrade from the tents, the only option Bagram personnel and troops had seen previously. The small homes offered troops protection from environmental conditions including wind, snow, sand, and cold. During 2005, a USO facility was built and named after former pro football player and United States Army Ranger Pat Tillman. A second runway, 2,500 meters long, was built and completed by the United States in late 2006 at a cost of US $68 million. This new runway is 497 meters longer than the previous one and 280 millimeters thicker, giving it the ability to land larger aircraft such as the C-5 Galaxy, C-17 Globemaster III, IL-76, and 124 and 225, or the Boeing 747, which is used by civilian cargo airlines. By 2007, Bagram had become the size of a small town, with traffic jams and many commercial shops selling goods from clothes to food. The base itself is situated high up in the mountains and sees temperatures drop to minus 29 degrees Celsius. Due to the height and snowstorms, commercial aircraft have difficulty landing there, and older aircraft often rely on very experienced crews in order to be able to land there. The base was able to house 10,000 troops in 2009. The 2007 Bagram Airfield bombing was a suicide attack that killed up to 23 people and injured 20 more at a time when Dick Cheney, then Vice President of the United States, was visiting Afghanistan. The attack occurred inside one of the security gates surrounding the heavily guarded base. Yusuf Ahmadi, one of the Taliban spokesmen, claimed responsibility for the attack and said that Cheney was the intended target. This claim is supported by the relatively limited number of large suicide bombings carried out in Afghanistan. Combined with the intensity of this particular attack and the fact that Cheney was at the base, Cheney was unharmed from the attack. However, among the dead were US soldier, a US contractor, a South Korean soldier, and 20 Afghan workers at the base. In March 2009, a car bomb exploded outside the gates of Bagram Airfield facilities, wounding 3 civilian workers. In June 2009, 2 US soldiers were killed and at least 6 other personnel were wounded during an early morning rocket attack. In October 2009, the state reported on Bagram's expansion. It reported that Bagram was currently undergoing $200 million expansion projects and called the airfield a boom town. According to the article, official US policy is not to create a permanent occupation force in Afghanistan, but it is clear from what's happening at Bagram Airfield, the Afghan end of the Charleston to Afghanistan lifeline, that the US military won't be packing up soon. In November 2009, construction of the permanent detention facility was completed. It housed about 3,000 inmates, mostly Afghans who were fighting against Afghanistan Army and NATO-led forces. In March 2010, Taliban attacked an area at the base with rockets. One of the rockets landed next to a bee hut in a camp located on the west side of the base, killing a Bosnian national who was working at Bagram as a contract firefighter. In May 2010, a group of nearly a dozen Taliban attacked around the north end of the base. The assault left 1 US contractor dead, while 9 service members were reported wounded.
All right, Tommy, just don't stress, all right?
Spokesman for Bagram said a building was slightly damaged during the attack. Taliban spokesman claimed 20 armed men wearing suicide vests attacked the base with 4 detonating explosives at the entrances. But the military spokesman said they failed to breach the perimeter and were unable to detonate their suicide vests. The attackers were dressed in US Army uniforms. Early on the morning of 30 December 2010, Taliban forces fired two rockets on Bagram, though no casualties were reported. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the incident. After the 2012 Afghanistan Quran burning protests, the United States decided to transfer the running of the Parwan detention facility to Afghan National Security Forces, although the Americans continued to have access to the facility and veto power over the release of inmates. On 18 June 2013, the base was the subject of a mortar attack by Taliban forces, which resulted in 4 US troops being killed and several others wounded.